Gaming can be very competitive at times, and they're continuing to stay competitive. Not only this, but they are starting to share very close similarities with real life and require more powerful parts. But will one of the most hated GPUs keep up with these games and maybe even future games? This is a MSI Geforce RTX 4060, and it is priced at about $300, not too cheap, not too expensive, especially for a 40 series card, which is why it stood out to me. I mean, $300 for the NVIDIA encoder, DLSS 3, and ray tracing. We got an issue though. This 4060 was released July 29th of 2023, and it has only 8GB of VRAM. This is awful considering that the 1080 Ti was released about 7.5 years ago in 2017 and has 11GB of VRAM. Yes, 3 more gigs. Doesn't sound like a lot, but the fact that a 10 series card has more VRAM than a 40 series card is absolutely insane. Not only this, but you can get any AMD Radeon card that is also $300, and it will outperform the 4060. So is this just a scam? No, it is not. We have to realize that Radeon cards are practically made for gaming, while GeForce cards are made for everything. I am a YouTuber, game modder, and video editor. The 4060 is perfect for what I do. But what about you? You're most likely a gamer, and if you are a YouTuber, well, this whole video was made off of the 4060, so you can use this as an example. But again, what about the gamers, you know? Okay, so if you want to go straight to the benchmarks, go ahead and skip to 319. So honestly, this card receives a lot of hate, and the whole time I was unboxing this, I was pretty happy. So before you say something about my own choice, just know that, well, I was happy, but we ended up having an issue, which you will see later on. Anyways, here she is. So after removing all the plastic and stuff, we got straight to work and swapped out the good old GTX 1030 for my beautiful 4060. I also replaced my 8GB of RAM with 64GB of RAM. I sold my old PC, so I was using older parts temporarily, just in case you're curious. So we got everything plugged in, power it on, and that is not what we wanted. So it probably did work, I just had the PCIe pin loose or something, but I decided to put it in the bottom slot temporarily. Later on I put it back in the top and it ended up working. We got the card in our PC, ready to game. We load up Black Ops 6 and want to play competitively. These are our settings, but what FPS do we actually get in game? We're on the map called Pit, and it is a tiny map, so it might be easier to run, of course. In the top left we can see that I'm averaging 170 to 180 FPS with the 1% low going down to 80 every once in a while, but mainly hovering at 140. This is perfect for me because I play at 144Hz, and honestly, if I was playing competitive, I would probably play at stretched res, which would help boost the FPS a bit as well. But even in combat with explosions, ragdolls, and you know, everything else that is going on here, we are maintaining a frame rate at about 170, which would be perfect for someone with a 165Hz monitor. Even on this map that is much larger with more scenery, props, and textures, we can see that it keeps about the same frame rate. This can definitely be played competitively at 1080p 165Hz. But can it handle a more intensive first-person shooter like The Finals? We're getting 130 to 150 FPS with a 1% low of about 90. I want 1080p 144 FPS, but 120 would work just as fine. I would recommend capping it at 120 in this situation because it will feel more fluid. If we turn on frame generation, we get an amazing frame rate at the same exact settings. This isn't really great for comp because of the input lag, but if you're just an average Joe looking for a stable frame rate, this is totally made for you. I mean, 200 FPS with 1% lows of 140 is insane. We get 50% more FPS. I'm not sure if I calculated that right, but whatever. Anyways, if we put everything on epic, so max graphics, we'll get 120 FPS, which is really good. I did a lot of testing on this game because it is probably the most performance demanding game I have, but 120 FPS with 1% lows of 90 on max graphics is something I can deal with, even though it is using frame generation. And for Fortnite, these are the best settings you can have. If anything, turn meshes and view distance to high. So while gliding, we're getting about 170 to 180 FPS with 1% lows of 80, I'd say. And for some reason, Fortnite stutters a lot, even outside of testing. Now, I don't know why this is, because we're getting great frame rate, but maybe it's just the VRAM on this card. In this little train station, we're sitting above 200 FPS with 1% lows of 110. This is definitely a great frame rate, and again, for competitive, I would probably play stretched res, so we would definitely pull out some more frames. Okay, right here, I don't know why my ramp didn't place, but even when we die, the frame rate remains high. On older cards, it usually drops quite a bit. Half Sword is a simulation game in Unreal Engine, so we're gonna push our card. Okay, so a consistent 80 FPS on epic settings with 4 bots here. Not the best, but there's a lot of simulating going on. So what do I know? We actually have a very consistent 80 FPS, since 1% lows are basically at 70. Only 10 frames lower. Even during the fights, we're getting the same exact frame rate, and I will say that this game would not run as good if I had gore on. I turned it off for monetization reasons and because of performance. The gore is based off of a particle system which is rendered by the CPU, so it would not be a fair comparison. Okay, now on cinematic mode, which is max graphics in this game, we're getting 24 frames a second. Well, that is cinematic, I guess, because, you know, movies and B-roll is usually shot at 24 FPS. I don't know if it's supposed to be like this, but it would make sense. So for Stalker 2, these are the best possible settings you can have. Some are on high because it has no impact on performance. So if you want that high frame rate, just copy these settings, but maybe lower shadows. I forgot to do that when I recorded this video. And we're getting about 70 FPS with 1% lows of 40 to 50. I think the game is just optimized poorly, to be honest, and they're likely relying on DLSS and FrameGen. Sadly, every company that uses Unreal Engine does that now. So as you can see, the 4060 is decent for what today's standards would be considered. This is definitely great if you're playing games at 1080p 60 FPS, because on no game, it goes lower than that, except for Half Sword on max graphics for some reason. Although we didn't test it much, from my personal experience on a large variety of games outside of testing, this card is great. But would I recommend it? Yes and no. If you're a gamer, you should go with something like the Radeon 7600 XT, which is about the same exact price when it is on sale as the 4060. The Radeon 7600 XT definitely has much better performance than the 4060. Sadly, I am too broke to make a video on it, but you can see other benchmark videos too. If you're a content creator, you can still get the Radeon card, which I would recommend as well. Maybe get a capture card on the side. Now, the only way I would recommend the 4060 is if you're doing a lot of 3D work, heavy video editing, or using more demanding streaming and recording settings. This is why I mainly wanted the 4060. But even then, I now want to sell it to get a Radeon card because I mainly want a GPU for gaming reasons now. I also heard some things about the 5070, so you know, I might have to just slide up on that. That being said, I think I covered everything I should have. If I missed anything or you think I should add something else, please let me know in the comments. I will be ending the video here. Hopefully I'll see you in my future videos. Peace.